For you being so.
100 million animals are exploited in biomedical, aeronautic, automotive, military, agricultural testing. 90% of these animals are not protected by the Animal Welfare Act. My name is Henry Ernest, and I'm going to talk about the Animal Welfare Act and what rights animals have during medical testing and other testings like pharmaceutical and makeup. I'm going to go over the Animal Welfare Act of 1966. I'm going to talk about what animals are protected under the AWA, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that the animals are subjected to that aren't protected. The Animal Welfare Act, or the AWA, was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1966. It's the only federal law in the U.S. that regulates the treatment of animals in research and exhibition. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service and the Department of Agriculture oversee the Animal Welfare Act. And then the House and Senate Agriculture Committees have primary legislative jurisdiction over the AWA. So with that being said, there's not a specific task force that is put into place to check laboratories for testing. There's not, because the AWA was put in place, there's no law enforcement agency that goes around checking laboratories. Will you please get off your phone, sir? That go around checking laboratories for animals being treated that are or aren't protected under the AWA. So that's the overall Animal Welfare Act. Now I'm going to go into what animals are protected. And some of these include, which this was strange for me, live or dead cats. They can't be used in testing. Dogs, hamsters, rabbits, non-human primates, guinea pigs, are you awake? Guinea pigs, and other warm-blooded animals determined by the Secretary of Agriculture. So all those animals, the last one's kind of a broad name given, but all those animals are protected, so they can't be used in testing. Now is not the time for questions. Excluded from the list, so animals that can be used in testing are birds, lab mice, farm animals, and all cold-blooded animals. Now, under farm animals, horses are protected, but they're protected under their own law that will exclude them from testing. And a lot of the research that I was looking up, it always referred to lab mice, lab rats, and things like that. So it got me wondering, what's the difference between a lab mouse versus a normal house mouse? And what I came up with is pretty much lab mice or lab animals that are given the lab whatever animal name were genetically grown like DNA in a test tube in a lab somewhere. So lab mice, for example, they're larger, they're fatter, they're calmer, and they're less aggressive. So having that bigger body of a mouse will allow for scientists or whoever else to have more of a surface area to test things on, and you get more of a reaction. So going into the animals that are treated and aren't treated, we're going to talk about some of the things that the animals are subjected to that aren't protected. And some of those things include they're subjected to force feeding, forced inhalation, starving, dehydration, restraint tests, so they tie them down to a table to see how they're going to react. And then a big one that they're subjected to is the Drazy eye test, which different like shampoo makers will take rabbits, for example, and they'll tape or they'll pin their eyes open and put shampoos in their eyes to see how the animals react to it. So that's the big thing that I read, like with mice and rabbits are subjected to. And then going into that, the Department of Agriculture reported in 2016, which 2016 was the latest one I could find, that 71,370 animals suffered pain during experiments, and they weren't given any type of like pain sedative, so they weren't given morphine or anything like that. So while they were being tested, they were experiencing pain through the whole time. And these animals will, another thing they'll be subjected to is like burn tests. So they'll test burn creams and things like that. And all the while, they're not given any type of pain sedative. So going over again, we pretty much covered what the AWA is, or the Animal Welfare Act, when it was established, what animals are covered and aren't covered, and some of the tests that they are subjected to. So I hope that sheds a little bit more light onto what the AWA is. Thank you.